You're the best, girlfriend. Go to the main antenna.
Aliens have invaded and they're forcing people to dance. The premise for Space Channel 5 Part 1 is simple, if a touch bizarre. The year is 2499 and you play sexy reporter Ulala, who is covering the event for Space Channel 5 while fighting off the aliens at the same time.
It's Space Channel 5 again. Take this.
To do this, she has to be better at dancing than they are. This is accomplished by watching their moves and repeating them with perfect timing when it's your turn. Despite its simple nature, the bright and colourful action is incredibly addictive and, to put it simply, great fun.
More flames up ahead!
The whole game only lasts about an hour, even once you've unlocked the extras, and it's almost impossible to actually lose, but that doesn't seem to detract from the appeal at all.
I'm getting dizzy.
If you manage to hit the cues spot on, then you get more people dancing with you and the whole atmosphere picks up. But bodge a few prompts and you'll soon find yourself dancing alone, with a dejected and dispirited Ulala trying desperately to keep the alien menace at bay. The graphics are gorgeous and the sound is unsurprisingly great, and the whole package jumps along at a great pace, keeping you interested all the way. For something so simple and so short, it'll still be a game that you'll come back to time and time again. Fantastic fun.
Here goes nothing. Up, up, up.
All right!
Stay tuned.
Prepare to have your mind reduced to noodles as Parappa The Rapper 2 hits PS2.
Noodles. At first, I liked it, but now I can't believe.
Wow, that's a cool afro.
Parappa's hometown is suffering from the horrendous noodleization effect, causing all the food and even hair to turn into noodles. The only way to put a stop to this is to master some funky rapping techniques.
Hold hands.
Hold hands!
Please, Parappa, do something.
But that afro looks good on you.
Don't say that.
The 8 short chapters unfold with tales of miniaturization, joining the army, romantic karate, battling noodle hair, and all manner of other weirdness.
Anything goes, even Hawaiian. Anything goes, even Alaskan. 3, 2, 1. Crank the speed, let your body go. 3, 2, 1. Crank the speed, let your body go. Crank the speed, let your body go.
The audio quality is great, with each of the characters having their own personal sound and style, which is fortunate considering the whole game is based around your ability to follow the music.
Cut, J, tip, trim, cut, snip, trim, cut, J, cut, trim, J, cut, side to side, I'm the rap, side to side, I'm the rap,
And the graphics are also gorgeous, with all the characters having a huge range of facial expressions that really help you get into the silliness of the story.
take the poo.
What's going on? What happened?
Roll it on your spoon, create your own boom. Roll it on my phone, create my own boom. I bet you didn't know, noodles the rule.
The big problem is that you spend the entire game watching the symbols at the top of the screen. If you take a moment to watch the action, then you're bound to miss one of the cues and mess up your timing. From then on, it's all downhill and it'll be noodles for everyone at dinner time.
Say ho, ho, ho! Because I'm the MC and you're the crowd. You better enjoy it right about now.
Shadowman came to PS1, the poor little machine just couldn't cope. But now, with the power of PS2, Shadowman's Second Coming is making up for its previous failings.
Jonny? What the?
Hey, welcome home, honey.
Let's dance.
He's over there.
This time it's looking very polished, with every attack provoking a sparkling display of special effects and everything looking very realistic. So it's a shame that these visual displays are accompanied by a distinct feeling of vacancy.
I should get moving.
As you wander the streets of New Orleans, there's nothing much going on, which works fine out in the bayou, but comes across as strange in the city. Following on from the original plot, you play Mike Leroy.
Dead side. No place like home.
A man possessed of the ability to travel back and forth between the real world and the dead side. This happens every sunset, as Leroy transforms into Shadowman, gaining variety advantages and flaws in the process.
I should get moving.
The dead side is much more exciting to behold, filled with freakish horrors that are just as hideous as they are formidable.
Jonny must be around here somewhere.
But sadly, the combat comes across as a bit clumsy, which can be unfortunate when facing off against the cunning AI.
Bloody Egypt! I think I've broken my skull. My brains are sure to be pouring out all over the place any minute.
What brains?
On the plus side, the puzzles are spot on and the voice acting is very professional. You're now looking at one of the worst games ever made for PS2. Jonny Mosley Mad Trix is everything that SSX Tricky is not.
Parallel with the 360.
For a start, it's laughably slow. As your skier makes his way down the virtually horizontal slopes, you almost expect him to grind to a halt at any moment.
180. Speed freak.
And it's not as if there's anything to see as you trundle along the featureless courses.
Double back.
It's the video game equivalent of a drive up the M1 in a Reliant Robin.
Tweaked out combo.
To call the tricks mad is stretching the truth to breaking point.
Combo with a whip combo.
Spinning, skiing backwards and going up small ramps is about as insane as it gets.
Fill grab with a rodeo. Rail slide.
It scores 1 out of 10. We've said enough. You've seen enough. Next.
Rail slide with a fill grab.
Godai Elemental Force bursts onto the ninja scene, coming up against such opposition as Onimusha and Seven Blades. You get to play Hero the Ninja, faced with a wide selection of puzzles that, while they may not be the most challenging obstacles in the world, won't detract from the action at all. The main aspect of the game is the fighting, of which there's plenty.
Crap!
There are loads of flashy moves to pull off, and many of them actually prove to be useful as well. And the action just keeps on coming. The restricted view doesn't prove to be as irritating as you might first expect. Although it would be nice to see a bit more in the game's few open areas. The graphics can be a bit glitchy on occasion, but are generally good, including some decent water and motion blur effects, along with several amusing character animations. Character progression keeps things interesting as the game continues to grow, and being resurrected where you fell also keeps the action moving along nicely. Elemental Force works well as a game, albeit one with a slight smell of a budget title. The Knockout Kings series has been around for a while, but it hasn't really progressed a great deal in all that time, yet it still manages to return to the shelves every year as a decent, true-to-life boxing simulation.
Whoa, a real low blow.
But can it really survive against the more arcadey and more exciting Ready to Rumble series?
Better get those hands up.
That's a good right. Head on that. Frazier lands a hard hook upstairs.
Once more, there are no sweeping changes. However, there are several improvements worth noting. The motion capture has come on considerably, making the fighters look much better and move more realistically. They appear solid and realistic, with appropriate reactions to the action around them. The motion blending seamlessly merges different moves together, making the whole fight run very smoothly.
Good combination. Connected with the hard hook. Clean shot to the head. Blocks the headshot. Landing a solid combination to the head. Solid right upstairs.
Zeroed in on his head.
The speed of the action has also been turned up a notch, making the whole thing more dynamic. And there are some nice effects, such as the ropes around the ring and the stunned haze as you stare up blankly from the canvas. Even the AI has been tweaked so that you can tell the difference between the individual fighting styles.
You could have blocked that one. Someone needs to teach this guy how to block.
Arakawa slips the left.
The lineup includes numerous personalities, both contemporary and legendary. Everyone you'd expect is here, with the notable exceptions of Mike Tyson and Prince Nassim. They obviously have commitments elsewhere.
Busted him in the chest.
Midway through round
The game modes extend to exhibition, tournament and career, and the last of which allows you to take a fighter up from nothing and take him to the top.
shot to the head.
He's getting his head ripped off. Waiting to unload that combination.
But the chances are that you'll spend most of your time in two-player mode, knocking the bejesus out of your mates. That's what it's all about after all.
Delivers a solid counter with Onishi. Goal!
All said and done, this is a perfectly acceptable boxing game, probably the best on the PS2, with the notable exception of Ready to Rumble, which simply puts it out for the count.
I am Zola Dane, Royal Seer and Advisor to Lady Mishala. It is an honor to meet you.
Thank you. Draken, the Ancient's Gates, has followed the wise marketing strategy of having an attractive female lead, but it has much more to offer than merely this, with an extensive storyline and some beautiful scenery. The action follows our heroine, Rin, and her talking dragon, marauding around the landscape, fighting monsters, talking to villagers and looting everything in sight, before heading into town to purchase the latest in adventure chic. The main plot is huge, with side quests being issued by almost everyone you meet. If anything, there's probably more to do here than is actually necessary.
And of them all, none was greater than the Dragon Mother. Malache. It's said that if she can be awakened, so too will the last dragons of the Order.
But those are just legends.
The legends are true.
The controls are well designed and easy to master, and the combat system includes an interesting locking function, which means you can stay focused on a particular opponent while trying to avoid being hit. What's more, there are some great battles to be had flying on the back of your dragon, in which you get to breathe huge swathes of flame across your enemies.
Did you find the site, Arok?
I did, but the trees were too dense. I couldn't get close. I'm afraid I'll need you to journey into the swamps for me, Rin.
That's a fine greeting. The graphics are beautiful, including some gorgeous rolling landscapes, highly detailed textures and objects, and some fantastic character models. As you visit locations, they automatically appear on your map, making navigation a cinch. And you can save the game any way you like, although it will eat up a large chunk of your memory card in the process.
Will you do as I ask?
Payment, wizard. What can you offer us?
2 souls, Prince.
While it may look like many other games that have gone before it, Draken proves to be bigger, better, and much more fun than the majority of its competitors. Peter Pan Adventures in Neverland is clearly aimed at children, and while the very young may find it amusing for a short time, the chances are that most will get bored very quickly.
Let me fly, Peter, please.
Okay, Danny, we need a little of Tink's pixie dust first. Tink! Well, where are you, Tink? Where's she gone to now?
Peter!
That said, the graphics are pretty good. The scenery is crisp and solid, and the characters look fine, although possibly a little too smug for comfort. The story is simple enough. Due to unfortunate circumstances, Peter Pan has lost his powers of flight, and in order to regain it, has to charge around the island gathering pixie dust jars, treasure and maps. Determined to prevent his hyperactive behaviour are a small army of pirates, crabs, snakes, bees, crocodiles, and other subtropical troublemakers. And there's no need to be concerned about Peter's reckless use of sharp instruments. All his opponents are clearly just dazed by his ferocious assaults. No pirates or fluffy animals were harmed in the production of this game. The big problem is that it's simple, straightforward, and basically just dull. The levels are as linear as you can get, the challenges fail to challenge, and even the occasional flying level is simply an aerial slalom. While it manages to be a more solid game than many licensed titles, Peter Pan was designed to amuse the under-5s, and that's quite possibly all it'll do.
The pirates kidnapped you and the rest of the Lost Boys to keep me busy. It seems Captain Hook is searching for a hidden treasure map.
A treasure map? Wow!
Fancy a change of pace from all the guns and racing? Ico is just the tonic you've been looking for. Set among the ancient stones of a strange old castle, you're presented with a constant challenge in the form of intricate puzzles as you try to rescue the princess and keep the shadowy forces of the Dark Queen at bay. This is Ico, a young boy who's been exiled from his village because of the horns growing out of his head. The superstitious villagers locked him away in the deserted stronghold, where he begins to have visions of a princess held within the walls. He soon finds her prison, and his adventure really begins. The game consists almost entirely of exploring the marvellously detailed and gorgeously ethereal castle, as you find or create an easy route in order to lead the fragile princess, Yorda, to freedom. The puzzles flow together well and don't come across as simply a series of hurdles, but as a beautifully flowing storyline. The only interruptions in the serene wanderings of our diminutive hero are the occasional assaults by the shadow monsters, sent by the sinister Dark Queen to capture Yorda. These fights seem eerily appropriate in the general ambience of the game, with the only sounds being Aiko's desperate attempts to fight the things off. Yorda does a good job of being completely vague, getting distracted by the animals and needing to be continually led around. The first time through the game you get no clues about what she's saying to you, but things will become a little clearer the second time around. With a calm, haunting atmosphere, a thought-provoking series of puzzles, and an evocative storyline, the whole game is relaxing and refreshing, while still providing an ample challenge. There are some games, the cream of the crop, that instantly become classics. Games like Tetris and Bust-A-Move. But the problem with these archetypes is the slew of instantly forgettable clones that they spawn in their wake. Worms Blast is unashamedly similar to Bust-A-Move and Puzzle Bobble, but dosed with a healthy dollop of Worms formula. And as clones go, this one makes a concerted effort to float above the mediocrity. The playing style is familiar to anyone who's played those games, but with the inclusion of the traditional Worms arsenal, fired with the usual combination of elevation and power. To add to the complications, your hero has to manage all of this while perched in a precariously bobbing raft on a constantly rising water level. And if that doesn't sound enough like a Japanese endurance game show for you, then there's the multiplayer challenge, where your opponent makes every effort to sink you while staying afloat himself. The single-player game is huge, with over 60 puzzles of increasing difficulty scattered throughout the world map. Tournament mode contains even more challenges, with the simple aim of staying alive. But it's the two-player mode that's likely to hold your interest longest, even though it's not quite as competitive as games like Bust-A-Move. It's all tremendous fun, and could well be one of the best puzzlers on the PS2. But the multiplayer mode just isn't as ferocious or devious as it should be. Kessen 2 delivers all the great heroes from the ancient Chinese novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and just like the original game, concentrates on the strategic side of warfare, but with a new emphasis on heroic characters and powerful magic.
You obey! He's actually
Right from the start, the cutscenes do seem to drag on a bit, but they're certainly impressive to watch. Here, your closest allies present war counselling to help strengthen your military might through 30 historical stomping grounds.
I know we will save her.
Battle strategies are also presented for your consideration, all of which have a direct influence over your next skirmish. Here, your armies are controllable from the easily accessed map screen, providing a useful overview of the terrain and increasingly tricky attack formations of the enemy. A rather limited form of interaction overall, but the well-judged learning curve provides serious slaughter in the later scenarios.
Brand your hide with Machow!
Close-up control can be rather awkward at times, and cutting a swathe through the chaos will often inflict casualties on both sides. This tedious task of thinning out the enemy numbers makes for a slow-paced experience overall, and the only thing that will keep you returning to the scene of the battle is sheer desperation to watch the next beautifully crafted cut scene. If you're after something deep, it's certainly worth a look, but otherwise you'll be hard-pushed to find any immediate thrills here.
About time, huh?
KOE's Dynasty Warriors 3 is one of the most chaotic fighting experiences on PS2. And if you're bored of Tekken and Dead or Alive, this could be the answer.
Lend me your strength.
This latest barrage of bone-crunching violence now comes with 3 times the number of levels offered in Dynasty Warriors 2, split between 23 stages with 40 characters to play with overall. But most impressive of all is the all-new 2-player mode, which, awkward camera angles aside, provides a welcome new approach. Thankfully, the new visual additions haven't reduced the numbers of the heaving masses, and slaughtering the swarming enemy is more engaging than ever. And to make things even more spectacular, you must now string together more elaborate combos and take to horseback in the midst of the carnage. Unfortunately, there's a price to pay for so much visual excess, and the viewing distance in both single and multiplayer is limited through the rather dull fogging effect. Buildings, trees and enemies appear from nowhere, but with so much mayhem to engage, you rarely have the time to take in the surroundings. Also, you're now given the opportunity to select your bodyguard formations. These faithful companions are always on hand to cover your back, and like your chosen character, gain valuable experience after a successful punch-up. Dynasty Warriors 3 soon becomes repetitive, but despite its considerable lack of depth, it's also tremendously gratifying to slay an entire legion of rampaging goons with easy-to-use combos. If you've never experienced the bedlam of Dynasty Warriors, then it's worth shelling out 40 quid to witness carnage on such a scale. There's no shortage of snow-themed games around at the moment, and here's another one. Rather than going head-to-head with the awesome SSX Tricky, Dark Summit offers a winter sports game with a plot. It seems that harmful pollutants are being dumped on a popular ski resort, sections of which have been sealed off by security chief O'Leary. Your character, Naya, has been sent in to investigate, and she soon unearths a complex X-Files style conspiracy involving aliens and military cover-ups. It's all very strange, but it does provide an incentive to keep on with the challenges.
Well, I haven't seen you here before.
Hey, sorry about that.
If I find out that some punk snowboarder isn't following the rules, then I will crack down. You tell him, Chief.
Out on the slopes, you'll find the courses are absolutely huge and littered with all sorts of obstacles and interesting playthings to trick off. There are also lots of varied challenges to keep you occupied.
This is my day.
Even if some of them are a bit strange and disturbing. The tricks are easy to perform and usually look good, and there are a few special tricks that are a bit more taxing. You can learn more of these as you progress through the game, completing the challenges. The visuals are very nice, including some lovely animations and scenery interaction, and the game physics is spot on. You even get a multiplayer mode. The biggest problem is the sheer size of the courses.
Now this is getting interesting.
This is only the beginning.
Whilst it's great for just fooling about on, it's a real pig to find all the challenge points and to discover where you're going in order to complete them. Dark Summit does a good job of putting a plot into a snowboarding game. Its visuals are beautiful, and the actual snowboarding is great fun. But it still doesn't quite manage to be as attractive as SSX Tricky, although it certainly makes a nice change.
Messieurs, you will now learn what it costs to defy the Emperor. Murderer, you shall burn in hell. Fuego.
Don Diego is fighting for the common man against the tyrannical Spanish governors. Using his alter ego, Zorro, he slices and dices his way through the Spanish soldiers with flair and grace, gaining a reputation as one of the greatest swordsmen who ever lived. So it's extremely surprising that a game about a legendary swordsman should not even give you the chance to swing a blade. Instead, you have to follow a series of on-screen symbols in order to trigger a particular combat sequence. It all looks very stylish, but leaves you with the feeling that you're not really contributing to the action. It's all very unsatisfying. The graphics are occasionally attractive, although the architecture can be a bit harsh, and it's all too often mired in darkness anyway. Zorro's cloak proves to be the high point of the visual effects, bringing a nice sense of drama to everything he does. But with the added drawbacks of long loading times, simplistic puzzles, and bad guys who respawn when you retrace your steps, the whole thing just becomes a frustrating disappointment. Frank Herbert's Dune is one of the great classics of the sci-fi genre. So why is it that no one can produce a decent film or game about it?
Location. We are on Arrakis, otherwise known as Dune, the planet of sand. This is the only known source in the entire universe of the essential spice.
The effort is based on the recent TV miniseries rather than the book or the 1984 David Lynch movie, but it still fails to include the image of any of the actors. You play Paul Atreides, battling to defeat the evil schemes of the Baron Harkonnen, while making alliances with the Desert Fremen, dodging the giant sandworms and struggling to avenge the destruction of your family.
Raban, you must recapture Dune. Its surrender has been very costly to us. Our investment must pay dividends.
The Fremen are more than just a scattered bunch of natives. Our soldiers report that they are fearsome fighters.
Show yourself.
The idea is to use a mixture of stealth, cunning and all-out violence to outmaneuver your opponents. But the whole thing falls far short of that ideal. For a start, the biggest problem isn't the Harkonnens or the worms, but the camera. You can choose to control it yourself using the right analog stick, or let the AI look after it for you. But neither method works at all well, often leaving you fighting creatures off the screen or desperately trying to evade the worms as you run into the camera shot. The graphics don't help. The worms look impressive, but the jerky animations and atrocious lip syncs are a sight that everyone on Dune is eating the wrong kind of spice.
Transport until we get to the ambush point. Has Baron explained how the SOS jammer works?
It jams the Harvester's communication network and sends a false SOS to the carryall.
The whole thing falls short of what it could have been. Dune is a great license, but even hardcore fans will find this offering leaves a bad taste in their mouths. There are plenty of better action games available on the PS2.